Hey, I'm Chris of the Old Ass Retro Gamer.
I'm Sheldon with Retro Games, Vinyl, and Beer.
Oh. Church of the Game Grinder.
That hurt. Sorry.
That's fun to say.
Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder, and today we're doing another pickup video, and this is just no ordinary pickup video. This is my Midwest Gaming Classic 2017 pickups video, which I don't really know if that makes a difference at all, but here it is nonetheless. So of course, if you have seen my previous video where I talked about the Midwest Gaming Classic 2017, went to that convention in Milwaukee and had a blast, but of course, besides just the activities, being on a discussion panel, which I also uploaded a video for, one of the big lures is the vendor tent, which is a massive area with vendors from all over the Midwest. So basically this is kind of like any collector's wet dream. So this was an interesting test in self-control. So before I went to MGC, I decided to make a little mental list in my head of some games that I was going to look for. And of course, as always, just gonna pick up some random stuff while I'm there. Mostly just followed the deals. So as you see here, there's a lot of really kind of random stuff. And basically, you know, when something was a really good deal, it was like, okay, I'm gonna pick that up. That's something I've kind of been wanting for my collection. Besides some other games that I really wanted, prices were kind of not the best, you know, as to be expected, but there were deals to be had. Well, let's get on to it then. So when I first got to MGC, or at least the second day, immediately in the morning, first thing I did is I went to the vendor's tent and was gonna kind of do like kind of a quick run through looking for one of my top list items, which was original Shantae for the Game Boy Color. Unfortunately, it did not turn up, but potentially, who knows, there's a shop that was there that has a copy, so I don't know, we'll see what happens. But along with Shantae, I've decided to kind of start collecting some of the Way Forward catalog of games. You know, they've made some pretty cool games, none that I've played besides the Shantae games really. And I actually didn't really look into things before, but it was previously a video that Nintendo did on Wendy Every Which Way that kind of turned me on to the additional Way Forward games. So basically, with the Game Boy Color, of course, there was a Shantae game, which I did a review for, so if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's one of my older ones, but I'm still pretty happy with that review. But basically, the engine that they used for the game, the style, the pixel art, and some of the mechanics, basically carried over into a few of their other Game Boy Color games, with Wendy Every Which Way being kind of like one of their better games that they've made. So of course I was looking for that, but unfortunately I did not find that at all. I looked pretty much every single vendor that had Game Boy Color stuff. Of course I dug through, but didn't turn them up. But I thought it was interesting, so besides that, there's a couple other games kind of using a very similar Shantae engine, and that is the Sabrina games for the Game Boy Color. Sabrina being, as many of you might recognize the name, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which was kind of like a kid's tween show back in the day, but a couple other games using a very similar engine and style as the Shantae games. So I decided those would kind of be the other games that I was going to be looking for. And it just happens, the very first place I stopped at that had a couple of big bins of Game Boy Color games, there's another guy that was already kind of full on digging through the bins. So I was kind of patiently waiting there, and he was nice enough to say, hey, any games you're looking for in particular? So I told him I was looking for Wendy Every Which Way and the two Sabrina games for the Game Boy Color. And immediately he handed me one game, and that was Sabrina Teenage Witch, or no wait, Sabrina the Animated Series Zapped. So a cartoon based on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. But yeah, so I got that, and then within a few more seconds he ended up pulling out Sabrina the animated series Spooked. So 2 Sabrina games. Haven't had a chance to check them out, just watched some gameplay and checked out some screenshots, and sure enough, looks just like Shantae, so it'll be interesting to see if those games are actually any good, because a lot of times you never know with the licensed games. A lot of times they're just shovelware games, but as everybody knows, every once in a while there's kind of a diamond in the rough, and the games actually turn out to be pretty decent games that just have a different branding on them to help them sell a lot of times for, you know, smaller projects or smaller developers and whatnot. So then a couple other games that I was looking for while I was there, again, I did not find them, unfortunately. First one being Cybernator for the Super Nintendo, which turns out there was one other copy there, as far as I know. There could have been other copies that, I guess, maybe the game's in high demand at this point, but it turns out one of the other Minnesota Retro Gamer Society members picked that up from a local shop that actually had a setup there, so snooze you lose kind of situation. And then the other game I was looking for more towards the end, as I was kind of disappointed in having the specific items not being available, so I added A Boy and His Blob to the list, but I was not able to find that either, at least for a price that I thought was acceptable for what I was going for anyways. So again, I picked up a bunch of other stuff here. A lot of it was, you know, like I said, very random, just kind of chasing the deals. So I guess I will just kind of jump into some of the more one-off things that I got. So I picked up another Virtual Boy game. I got Tellero Boxer for the Virtual Boy. It's basically a virtual boxing game. One of the games that I had the opportunity to play when the system was actually out and available at, I think it was Blockbusters, it might have been Hollywood Video or Video Update, or maybe all of those places had demos for a lot of the Virtual Boy games, so I was able to check this one out, and now I have this in my collection, and that puts me up to, I believe, 10 Virtual Boy games at this point. It might be 9. I should really have counted before I did the video, but another Virtual Boy game, so that is pretty neat. And then kind of since I was doing all this digging and searching through Game Boy Color games, I came across another one of the Tomb Raider games I was missing, and this is Tomb Raider Curse of the Sword for the Game Boy Color. I never played the Game Boy Color versions of the Tomb Raider games, but from what I've seen from screenshots and videos, they actually look pretty cool. I've heard kind of hit or miss things about the games, but as one of the collections that I'm going for a complete collection for, being the Tomb Raider games, which I actually didn't mention in my tagged video response video that I did about collecting goals, because there are some game series that I'm shooting for entire game series. But another one off the list. Now I believe I'm just missing the other Game Boy Color game, besides maybe a possible physical release for one of the digital Tomb Raider games for PC and console. Then this next game was one of those games, is why I didn't have it a lot sooner than what I do, is a game that I used to absolutely love renting all the time when I was younger, and that is Fatal Fury 2 for the Super Nintendo. Now, if anybody has watched one of my older pickup videos, you would know that I have a massive crush on Maya Shiranui. At least I did when I was a kid. She was like one of my huge early day video game crushes, and I picked up a statue, but for some reason I didn't have the game, so I decided to pick this up. I still need Fatal Fury 1, and both of those games I used to rent all the time. Really enjoyed the art style and kind of more of a grounded gameplay with less crazy super special moves and things like that, but of course, gotta love Maya Shiranui. So this next one is pretty neat, and another game that I've never had the chance to play, and this is Icewind Dale: The Ultimate Collection. I actually got it for a few dollars less than what is listed, and basically this comes with Icewind Dale and its expansions. And if you haven't heard of Icewind Dale, think of games like Baldur's Gate or Dragon Age. It's basically kind of like another BioWare, Black Isle, I think Interplay had involvement, yeah. Another Western RPG. I've always heard really great things, just never had the chance to play the game, so now I have it in my collection, so who knows when I'll actually get to it with the backlog that I have, but still very excited to have that in my collection, and have everything in one package is pretty neat. Oh, and of course, how could I forget one of the other, so besides Shantae for the Game Boy Color, the other main game that I was looking for was Wonder Boy 3 Dragon's Trap for the Sega Master System. This is a game I've been looking for quite a long time, usually never find it complete, or usually for a price that I don't think is what I'm willing to spend on the game. A lot of times I just don't like spending, market value for games, because as a collector that ends up being really expensive. So I was looking for it. There was one copy that was at market value, which I kind of regret just not grabbing at the time, but I'm still holding out for eventually finding a great deal. So instead, not getting that and kind of wanting to boost my Sega Master System collection, I was eyeballing two different games. First one being Miracle Warriors, which is a first-person dungeon crawler RPG game, which is actually the very first game that I have memories of playing. Like I said before in one of my previous response videos, that I'm pretty sure Pitfall was the first game that I played for the Atari, and I'd played Mario and things like that before, but for having specific memories, Miracle Warriors was one of the first games that I ever played, and I was thinking about grabbing that. Wasn't crazy about the price. Again, you know, it was pretty much market value, so I gravitated to another game that I've heard nothing but great things, never had the opportunity to play, but I picked up Golvellius Valley of Doom, and this is basically kind of like a really cool side-scroller platformer game, kind of like Zelda in a way, Zelda 2 at least, and heard nothing but great things, so I'm really excited to check this one out. Super clean, everything's in there, and it was for a pretty solid price. So then next on the docket, one of the things that I have kind of been looking for to re-add to my collection was a lot of video game movies. So some years ago, 4 years ago or so, I decided to sell off all of my DVDs and CDs because I didn't think it was a good idea to have a huge video game collection and have a big DVD and CD collection, as I wasn't necessarily buying DVDs and CDs anymore, kind of going digitally with streaming and everything like that. So I sold off all my DVDs and movies, and I kind of regretted it a short while after, when initially, kind of when I was collecting, I didn't really have too much interest in other things like figures and posters and little like knickknacks and trinkets and things like that. Now that's kind of like a full part of what I collect, so I am kind of recollecting a lot of those DVDs that I got rid of. So I decided to pick up a few while I was there, and you know, as it happens to be these days, not a lot of people are super stoked on buying movies and DVDs, especially kind of more common things, so a lot of times you can get really great prices on them. So of course all of these I got for a lot better prices than what they were selling them for. So along with the Fatal Fury 2, I also picked up Fatal Fury Legend of the Hungry Wolf, which is one of two animes that were released by this video, which was basically just an animated Fatal Fury movie. They're decent, not great by any means, but definitely that early 90s anime style that I absolutely loved. And fortunately for me, here in Minnesota, we had a place called Video Update, and they had a pretty decent selection of anime, so I was able to rent these, and I used to have bootlegged copies for many, many years until I dumped all my VHSs way long ago, but I now have this, and pretty stoked to have that in my collection. Now I just need to get the second one. So the next thing here is something I've never had, and is Metal Gear Solid 4, the Metal Gear Saga Volume 2. And basically what this is kind of a summarization of the Metal Gear story, with this covering Metal Gear 3 and Metal Gear 4, and you know, some in-betweens there. I believe this came with the collector's edition of Metal Gear 4, which I don't have, or it might have been Volume 1, but I do know this came as a pre-order bonus if you pre-ordered Metal Gear Solid 4, which I did not. I didn't have a PlayStation at the time. It was a little bit later when I picked up my PlayStation 3, so the game had long been out by then, but pretty stoked to have this, as of course another game that I'm searching for a complete collection of, and I'm getting pretty dang close for like official releases besides some extra random stuff, is my Metal Gear Solid collection, or Metal Gear collection I should say. And then some other movies here, along with the Metal Gear. Like I said, I got these for a really good deal, so kind of hard to pass up. Haven't seen this one yet. Have the game, Heavenly Sword. I have heard this is pretty decent, so I will get around to watching that pretty soon here. And then Dante's Inferno, which again based after another PlayStation 3 game. I think it might have been on the Xbox too, I'm not sure about that. But have the game, haven't watched this yet, but now I have the opportunity to. And of course, classic Mortal Kombat, and this also comes with the unfortunate Mortal Kombat Annihilation, so a little double pack, so that's pretty neat, 2 movies in one. Mortal Kombat being one of the best video game movies around. You know, some of the CG animation is pretty janky, but you know, all in all, it's a pretty decent adaptation of the game. Of course, as everybody already knows that. So the last movie here then is Silent Hill for the DVD. Pretty decent. I actually enjoyed this one. Didn't think it was, of course, not as great as the games, but I think it could have been a lot worse. So I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, even though they mucked up a little bit of the story. But, you know, the basic elements were pretty much there. Of course, you gotta love that scene with Pyramid Head and the skin ripoff. So pretty neat. So then actually a chunk of the games that I picked up that kind of filled out my backpack for the day was there was a vendor there that had all these plastic bins, and pretty much most things in these bins were $1. There was a couple like $2 bins, and he had some like, you know, higher priced things like $5, $10 for consoles. He had a bunch of loose untested consoles, but I decided to start digging through some bins and pulling out some stuff. And of course, with somebody who's just trying to get rid of a lot of old back stock, it's a good opportunity to make some deals. So of course, that's exactly what I did. So most of these were in dollar bins, and after I grabbed all the stuff, kind of threw out an offer and basically got these for 50 cents each. So no complaints there. A lot of really cool things, nothing crazy, but then again, 50 cents. So first we'll just kind of run through the chunk of games here that nobody cares about and nobody collects for, and this is going to be a little stack of PC games that I grabbed. Well, actually, the first two here are DVDs, and that would be Space Ace and Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp. And if you've seen one of my previous pickup videos, I actually picked up a 3-pack. I don't know if these are the ones that are included in the 3-pack. I haven't actually checked them out yet, but, you know, for 50 cents and another copy of some pretty awesome animated experiences, you know, hard to pass up. So then the PC games. So I got Command & Conquer 3, Tiberium Wars, you know, not the best in the series, but I enjoyed the Command & Conquer games. You know, pretty much when this was initially released, there was tons of problems. Of course, being an EA published game, you know, rushed development, microtransactions, that whole deal, and kind of killed off the series as far as I'm concerned. I think there's been some things since then, but you know, still pretty cool to grab that. And then this one I thought was really neat, and this is a Doom shareware, Doom Knee Deep in the Dead. So I rarely ever see things like this, and usually when I do, they're like ridiculously high for some reason or another. Like seriously, like very few people actually collect PC games. I know there are PC game collectors out there, big boxes and things like that, but a loose disc for Doom, you know, still pretty neat to add, because that's a neat little piece of history that doesn't really exist anymore, is shareware games and things like that. So then this one I don't know much about, other than I've heard good things about it over the years, and that is Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, which is basically just a strategy game in the Middle-earth universe. So yeah, and of course I absolutely love Lord of the Rings. So the next one here is going to be Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, and of course kind of older legendary PC games. Unfortunately, again, a series that I haven't had the opportunity to play. I kind of got a little bit more curious about it when they did the reboot some years ago for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. I believe, I could be wrong about that, but turned out to be kind of a pile of crap. I mean, not a terrible game, but just not what fans of the series were hoped for, but I now have Alone in the Dark. And then you can never go wrong with the Duke Nukem 3D. So, you know, I don't know how much any of these PC games are worth. Like, that's something I generally don't check for, because, like I said, usually they're not worth anything, and they're kind of whatever people are just trying to sell them for. But I'm kind of surprised this one was chilling there, because I think just being a neat little collector's item, being Duke Nukem 3D, which is, you know, an epic game. So really cool to actually have a physical version of that. And then keeping up with the shooters, we're gonna go with Unreal. So actually a series that I've never had much time to play. I played one of the Unreal games, I believe, for the Xbox. One of my friends was kind of pretty big into making levels and things like that, so I played a little bit of Unreal with him. And there was like a later Unreal that I played a demo for. It was like 2003 or 2006 or something. I can't remember what Unreal that was, but had fun, you know, just kind of your deathmatch game, but having the OG version is pretty neat. And then lastly, for the PC games here, we got Star Wars Galaxies, an Empire Divided, and critically acclaimed Star Wars strategy games. I've heard nothing but great things about them, never played them myself, but I know the servers are gone at this point, but there might be like private servers and things like that. So hopefully someday I can get around to checking this out, but who knows. I'm not super into the Star Wars games anymore, but you know, that sounds like it's for a strategy game. It it's definitely one worth checking out. So besides the PC games, then there was a bin of Genesis games. So of course, had to go digging, and with me kind of giving up with my hopes of having all Genesis games complete, I'm starting to look at loose games, more seriously now, where with Genesis and Master System, for some reason, for the longest time, I just didn't want to buy loose games. But, I'm missing out. Prices are getting ridiculous, so I kind of just need to give in and pick up the games when I can. And maybe someday down the road, I can upgrade the copies. These games, I'm kind of surprised I didn't already have, so decided to pick them up. We got Sonic Spinball, of course, Sonic Pinball for the Sega Genesis. Then we got Sonic 3D Blast, which was kind of like a weird experiment with 3D Sonic. I mean, not a horrible game, but definitely not a great game by any means. And then this one I was really surprised that was in there, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Sega Genesis. Really cool beat 'em up. Yeah, kind of surprised why I hadn't seen this game in the past. Maybe just never came across a good price, but for 50 cents, it's kind of hard to pass up. A great beat 'em up. And then a game that gets a lot of flack that I think is horribly undeserved is Bubsy. Now, I actually used to have Bubsy for the Super Nintendo, but now I have it for Genesis. And, it's a pretty straightforward, standard platformer game with a, animal mascot. My stepmom actually used to play this game quite a bit, which I thought was pretty neat. But it seems like after the Bubsy 3D came out, a lot of people hate on the earlier Bubsy games, and they're actually not bad games. So it's kind of weird how things like that change because of internet videos. Then the only PlayStation thing that I grabbed from this vendor was an interactive CD sampler, Volume 3. Of course, I love demo discs, kind of neat relics from the past. Of course, I've talked about it many times before that I used to have a huge collection of demo discs, and before I was actually collecting, I ended up throwing them away, so kind of jump on the opportunity to grab demo discs, especially, for 50 cents. So then lastly from that vendor, I decided to pick up a bunch of Atari games. Like, he had so many Atari games, and I'm not really an Atari collector. I have a decent little collection of Atari games and systems, but there are some games that I definitely do want to have, do want the opportunity to play them again in the future. But for anybody who collects for the Atari 2600, Activision is kind of where it's at. A lot of straightforward games, they kind of spit them out, but they're always pretty decent games. So I nabbed a bunch of Activision games along with a couple others. So I'll just kind of run through these here. So we got Dragster, and I will say, because I haven't really talked about Atari much in any of my pickup videos, because it's pretty rare when I pick up Atari games, but I always loved Activision games because they give you an actual screenshot of the game, so you know exactly what you're going to get, compared to the games with the beautiful Atari art that they're known for, but vastly different from what you get in the game. So yeah, so Dragster, and then we got Skiing, straight up Skiing, and the most exciting one here, Bridge. Hey, Grandma loves Atari as well. And then we got Tennis. Then we got Laser Blast, which kind of looks like a Missile Command sort of game. A lot of these I have not actually played before. Then we got Checkers. And then lastly, the two other random games that I grabbed. So I picked up Sword Quest Fireworld. I have previously picked up Sword Quest Earthworld, so now I need Sword Quest Waterworld, I believe is the last one. And just kind of neat little adventure games that actually had a contest involved. James Rolfe, Angry Video Game Nerd, actually has some of the prizes, I believe, in his collection, and he talked about these in a video before. So kind of neat little thing, and fun little games to collect for the Atari. And then the last one here, I was like, how could I not pick this up? As you know, the Atari, especially that generation where games are just shoveled out, just garbage, so many garbage games. Like, there was a game for everything. And, surprisingly enough, this seems to be another one, and kind of a head scratcher in a way, but basic programming for the Atari 2600. So either it's basic programming, like low-level programming, or it's actually like the basic language, which is a programming language. So I have no idea, don't know anything about this, but I was like, hey, super clean copy, basic programming, maybe this is what I need to make it in the world. So who knows what will happen. Well, then as far as the vendor tent goes, that was pretty much the bulk of the pickups there, but of course on my way out the door, I wanted to support some of the local artists that made some really awesome stuff. There was a lot of various crafts and art and posters and perler bead arts and knickknacks, trinkets and necklaces and all kinds of neat stuff. And I'm always really kind of attracted to some of those things, especially when you can make the shelves look a little bit more pretty and put some stuff on the walls. So there was one artist in particular that I kept walking by and just loving his art style, and he was doing 4 posters for 20, so I started kind of flicking through the posters and pulling out a few that I wanted, and then I couldn't make up my mind on 2 other posters. It's going to be one or the other, and he kind of noticed my struggle, and he's like, hey, I see you're trying to make a decision there, so how about we just do 5 for 25? So I was like, heck yeah, let's do it. So I will show the posters off here. Of course, we've got a poster of Samus, kind of neat take, more of like a mech. And I really enjoy his art style. Like, pretty much everything that this guy did I thought was just absolutely gorgeous, and some of the ideas that he put into it, then I thought this was pretty neat, and got to support the old Mass Effect 2 and 3 waifu. I got a picture of Tally. So I don't have much for Mass Effect things besides the game, so I was like, hey, why not get a Mass Effect poster? And then, of course, gotta have the Solid Snake from Metal Gear. You know, this is my guy, so pretty neat to add that. Eventually I will be getting some frames for these when I transition my game room here in the near future, and kind of do a little extra with decorations. And then the other 2 posters here are from Overwatch, and we got one of my mains, as it were, and that's Mercy. Very cool. And then one of my other mains that got a pretty bad nerf not too long ago, and that is good old Diva. Yeah, so I absolutely, I love art so much in so many different ways, and a lot of times when I can spend the extra money to pick up some of that stuff and support these artists and talk to them and, you know, praise their skill and craft, like, I love jumping on those opportunities. Well, then a couple other, like, kind of random things that I got while I was at the convention. So in my previous MGC experience video, I talked about some of the panels that I attended, and I attended a panel by Tim Hansen and Chris Bidwell, who were 2 of the Nintendo 2015 World Championship finalists. They actually, you know, won the regionals of the Midwest, went to LA to compete at E3, and they were opening up for some questions, and I asked them a question about how they prepared, if they just played the original games or if they actually played the NES remix version, because I'd heard that there wasn't much of a difference compared to if you played the 3DS version or if you actually played the old games for Super Mario 3, Super Mario, and Dr. Mario. So when I was training, as it were, and I didn't train that much, I played the original games, and they, of course, played the NES remix, because why wouldn't you? But for asking a question, I got a little prize, which I thought was really cool, and it is an Ultimate NES remix for the 3DS, and signed by them and a couple others from the championships, so I thought that was really neat. So thank you very much for that. And I talked about it in the MGC Experience video, which I will be doing a preview video coming up here pretty soon. But of course I had the opportunity to talk with Saramaru, a developer, lead creator, and pixel artist for Henshin Engine, and he hooked me up with their latest version of the demo. And with that, I was like, hey, since you're here, and my good friend Ryan, who is also there kind of helping promote the game and the Turbo Room, I had them autograph my new demo for Henshin Engine, so that is pretty neat. And like I said, I will be putting together a little kind of where is it at video here coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. And of course, thank you very much for the demo and the autograph, and looking forward to the game. And then we're on to the last few items here. So pretty much that was everything that I got during the MGC. On the drive back, my friend and I thought it would be fun to stop at some Kmarts, because we heard that they were liquidating some things and some stores were closing down. Unfortunately, the Kmarts we stopped at weren't any of these stores that were closing down, and apparently Kmart hasn't been selling video games for quite a while, or at least these locations hadn't. So we didn't find anything there, but we did stop by a Goodwill, and I ended up picking up a few things, just kind of random things, you know, super cheap. So I was like, hell, why not? So the first thing here is another demo disc, and it's PlayStation 2 Jam Pack, Volume 13. And this has Shadow of the Colossus, Sly 3, Jack X, Ratchet, Deadlocked, Soul Calibur 3, Burnout, Chronicles of Narnia, Genji, Dawn of the Samurai, Castlevania Curse of Darkness, Brothers in Arms, Earned in Blood. So big demo disc. And, you know, a couple bucks, I was like, you know, why the hell not? And it's going to a good cause. So then these other two were, you know, ones I was like, why am I buying these? Like, I'm never going to play these games. Like, all these other games I will play eventually. But I thought about it, and I was like, you know, maybe someday, if I can get these actually running on a modern PC, it could be fun. Kind of picked them up in jest mostly, and just to kind of get a laugh from myself and my fiance because she's huge into Star Trek. Yeah, so if anybody's played either of these games, you will have to let me know if I should try to make it a point to check them out or if I should completely skip it. Especially Chris, old ass retro gamer, I know you're a big Star Trek guy and you're very familiar with the games, so let me know what you think about these ones. So the first one here is Star Trek the Game Show for PC, and this is Ultimate Trivia Challenge spanning over 30 years of Star Trek. Star Trek trivia. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that could be a bad game, but whatever, it is, it is. And this one I thought was really cool just because it's in super clean condition, everything's included, and that is Star Trek The Next Generation Final Unity for the PC. So, yeah, I don't really know much about this. Again, another Star Trek game, super clean, fun thing to add to the collection, big box stuff. So I think that will pretty much do it for this pickup video, of course, and I hope to see more people there next year because it was an absolute blast, and I'm sure next year it will be as well. So I guess closing this one out, of course, as always, I would love to hear your thoughts on some of these games. Has anybody played the Game Boy Color games? Anybody else collecting for the Virtual Boy? And what about that great Maya Shiranui? Yeah, and it'd be cool to hear if, is there anybody else out there who collects PC games? Like, I can't be the only one. And if I am, you come across PC game deals, hook a brother up. Well, I guess that will do it for this pickup video, MGC 2017 edition. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing another one of these next year. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time on the Game Grinder.